Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. This week we're going to pick up in Bull Creek, if I can find it here. We're going to head up Calabogue Sound, where we go through Skull Creek behind Hilton Head Island. From there we cross Port Royal Sound and go up the Beaufort River to Beaufort, South Carolina. From there we go through the Ladies Island Bridge, through Brickyard Creek, and we head down the Coosaw River. From there we head through the the Ashapoo Coosaw Cutoff Complex, and that gets us into the South Edisto River. We anchor for the night in the South Edisto River, and from there we head through the Watts Cut, and we make a short trip over to Tougadoo Creek, which we've never stayed in Tougadoo Creek before. It was our first day there, but that's where my friends Peter and Kristen were, so it was nice to catch up with them. Kristen made us a wonderful linner, they call it. They work on the Pacific coast remotely, so at 3 o'clock is their lunch hour, so they call it linner because it's kind of lunch and dinner, which is kind of cute. So I had linner with them, which was awesome. It was nice to catch up. So I guess we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. After spending a couple of days in Bull Creek, just kind of loafing around, playing on the shell beaches with the puppy dogs, it was time to get back on the road, and it was an absolutely glorious morning. It was calm, the sun was out, it was cool, but not, we weren't freezing or anything, so it was a very nice morning. As we headed up Calabogue Sound, we got absolutely destroyed by a big passenger vessel, and I know we should be prepared anywhere we go to get rocked. But when you're going up and down the Intracoastal Waterway, you really don't expect to get rocked that many times. So you get complacent. We had some stuff on the countertop, and it went flying around downstairs. And the crew, they have the worst tendency. Whenever there's problems, they run directly to the bow of the boat, which is the worst place they could possibly be. So you can see the crew up there, and Neptune doesn't stay up there long, but I do need to work with them on that, because there could be a very bad situation where if they retreat to there, it could end up very badly. They could end up in the water. So, but if you know anything about Huskies, they are a Husky derivative, and getting Huskies to do anything that you want them to do is a major challenge, as any Husky owner will know. And Linus is definitely the most Husky-like. Neptune is very Husky-like. They're both very independent and hard-headed. Hanwi is much less Husky-like. She's not really very Husky-like at all, so that's a good thing. Although she is, she is, though. She's very feisty, so if you don't know what Huskies are like, just look up on YouTube Lobo Dog Show, LOBO Dog Show, and that'll give you some idea. And read the comments below the video. It's just a short 2-minute video, but it kind of shows you what Huskies are all about. But after we made our way up Calabogue Sound, and actually what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to add additional netting on the boats. Once I install the hard Dodger, I'm going to add some more netting between the Dodger and the lifelines, so if ever we get into a situation where it's just we're in bad weather or something's going down, I can close those gates, and then the dogs will have to stay in the cockpit, which is a much safer spot for them. So I'm going to add that on this year for sure. So anyway, as we headed up Calabogue Sound, or rather once we were going through Skull Creek, I decided Skull Creek goes behind Hilton Head Island, and I decided to take a shortcut. Now, I didn't really have any reason to take that shortcut. I'd never taken it before. It does deviate from the Intracoastal Waterway, but it saves you maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So I decided, why not try it? And that actually came in much later to help us down the line. After taking the shortcut through Skull Creek, we spilled out into Port Royal Sound, and I was excited as we crossed Port Royal Sound. It was very calm, but I knew that was going to change, and we were also facing another transition that was going to be very beneficial for us. Now, it was partially luck and partially planning that got us across Port Royal Sound just at the point in time when the tides transitioned. So we'd get a little bit of a trailing boost as the tide went out, because you are going down Port Royal Sound a little bit to get to the Beaufort River, and we would get across Port Royal Sound just about the time when the tide transitioned and the tide would start coming in, and that would push us all the way up the Beaufort River. And this was critical. And it was partially luck, partially planning. I actually stayed an extra day in Bull Creek just so we would nail that tide transition. And it's so critical at this juncture because of the Ladies Island Bridge. Now, I know I've bitched about the Ladies Island Bridge in the past. I'm not going to wax poetical about it again, but if you don't get there by 3 p.m., then you have to sit there until 7 p.m. So they don't open between 3 and 7 p.m., and there's a 4-hour chunk in the morning when they don't open. I've talked about it before, I'm not going to get into it. But because we got a boost from the tide and the wind was going to pick up, and the wind was going to be blowing not directly at our back, but off of our port, I guess it would be our port stern. So there's names for all these points of sail, but I forget them. I'm not a term person at all. I fumble all the terms. But anyway, I know how to use the wind. I just don't know what the name of the point of sail that the wind is. But anyway, it was usable wind. We were going to nail that transition, so we would get a massive turbo boost as we went up the Beaufort River. And there were times as we were going up the Beaufort River that we were going 6.5 knots, which for us is crazy town. We love EJ. EJ is a beautiful old lady, old woman, but she is slow. And we've actually made a change to increase our speed, but that's not, I won't get into that for a few episodes till it actually happens. So anyway, we really hauled ass up the Beaufort River, and we made it to the Ladies Island Bridge literally 2 minutes before 2 o'clock. So not only did we make it before 3 o'clock, but because of the speed we picked up, we made it before 2 o'clock. And that is critical because if I hadn't have taken that shortcut through Skull Creek, which I just did it on a whim, I'm like, hey, let's just try this alternate route, why not? And if I hadn't have taken that shortcut, we would have missed the 2 o'clock opening at the Ladies Island Bridge, and we would have had to have waited until 3. Now, we still would have made the opening, before the big evening shutdown, but it did save us an hour of sitting there fighting against the current, burning fuel, and waiting. So it was an absolute treat going up the Beaufort River, nailing the tide transition, and getting to the bridge opening 2 minutes before it opens. I mean, when stuff like that happens, it really makes for a great day. It sounds stupid, but oh my gosh, it just made for a wonderful day. After spending a day in Beaufort waiting out some rain, we got up early the next morning and got back on the road. It was a beautiful day, and we headed up Brickyard Creek and then down the Coosaw River, and there's nothing overly interesting about either of those places. But I guess there is a Marine base right by Brickyard Creek, and it is fun. The Marines they've got planes there, jets, and they'll fly over the Coosaw River and do formations and, I suppose, drills and stuff, which is kind of fun to watch. But it is interesting, if the Marines have planes and the Army has planes, and I know the Navy has planes, why do we have the Air Force? It seems kind of redundant. I don't know. If everyone's got planes, what makes the Air Force special? Seems kind of weird, but I'm sure they all have their specific duties. I'm not a military historian or person, so but they're fun to watch, But anyways, I digress. So once you get down the Coosaw River, you enter into what I call the Ashapoo-Coosaw Cutoff Complex, and it's a series of 3 cuts. You've got the Ash Island Cut, and then the Ashapoo-Coosaw Cut, and then the Fenwick Cut. That's the third one. Yep. So that takes you from the Coosaw River through the Ashapoo River all the way over to South Edisto River. And the flows, the hydrodynamics in this area are absolutely fascinating. So I've got a screenshot here, and the path of the ICW is shown in black. And then I've got little, blue colored squares around different direction arrows that show which way the flow is traveling, the water flow. So it seems completely counterintuitive. This is when the tide was coming in, so it's just very interesting the flow through this area, especially at this time through the Ash Island cut. You would think the flow would be in the opposite direction, but you know, when man starts fiddling with nature, weird things happen. So it's just it's a hydrodynamically interesting area to me. So for what it's worth, there you go. After making it through the Fenwick Cut, we took a hard turn to port and started going up the South Edisto River. Since the South Edisto River since the current was going with us, I decided to go up about 4 miles up the South Edisto River and anchor right next to the entrance to Watts Cut, and then take Watts Cut the next morning. If I had waited till the next morning to go up the South Edisto River, I would have been fighting against the current, so if I can do something today that'll take half the time that it would the next morning, might as well do it today. So we went up and anchored for the night. We did pass a catamaran on the way, and I wasn't sure if it was Peter and Kristen, but it turns out that it was. They didn't have their AIS on, or maybe it was my AIS. They weren't showing up on AIS, so I wasn't sure if it was them or not, but it was. And we met up the next day in Tougadoo Creek anyways, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to make it that far this week. I gabbed on too much as per usual, so we'll have to tackle that next week. And that's all we have time for this week. I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I wouldn't make these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, Matthew Spotton, Peter Allen, and Natalie Linehan. Thank you guys so very much. Your support really means the world to me. I do have one legacy patron member, and her name is Joan Linbo. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she lives on in our hearts forever. We really miss you, Joan. If you are interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll take you to our Patreon page where you can sign up. And there are hundreds, literally hundreds of extra videos and photos of our travels, and I try and keep everything there up to date and post at least once or twice a week, so it gives you a little peek behind the curtain. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That'll help us out more than you'll ever know, and that actually doesn't cost you anything, so hit that like button. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.